This April 14th, 2022 meeting of the AMAT's Technical Advisory Committee meeting to order. It is 2:30 p.m. Aaron, would you do the roll call, please?
Of course. Shana Kilcoyne. Okay, Craig Lyon. Here. Jamie Acton.
Here.
Brad Coy.
Here.
Todd Van Hoek.
Present.
Kent Colhays.
Here.
Brian Lindemood.
Also present.
Steve Buffo.
Here.
Cindy Heil.
Here.
Stitchick. Okay, Luke Boland.
Here.
And Shana, are you on?
Yes, I'm present.
Okay, thank you. We do have quorum.
Okay, thank you. Would you proceed to the public involvement announcement, Aaron?
Of course, AMAT's committee meetings are open to the public, and the public is provided an opportunity to comment at each meeting. Business items are first presented by staff or consultant. After the committee discusses the business items, the public is invited to formally comment. Each participant will have 3 minutes to speak on their topic, and we will keep track of that. A couple of housekeeping items. This may be a little long today, so bear with me. If you're joining us virtually and you're not a member of the committee, please turn off your camera when you're not speaking on an item. And if you're joining us by phone, to mute and unmute the microphone, press *6. Now, some of people in the room may notice that we have an owl-like device in front of us. We are transitioning the AMAT's TAC and Policy Committee meetings to video as well as audio recordings. We did get a comment from the public that it is hard to follow along the committee meetings with Teams because Christine would log in as herself and that's all people would see is just Christine's portrait, regardless of who was speaking. And so it was hard to be like, who was doing this and who was doing that? So we're gonna go ahead and try this device. And it will kind of track people as they're speaking. There's a 180 view of the committee members, all of us, so smile for the camera. It is not showing the public unless they are speaking, so we'll see how that goes. Our plan is we're going to make things a little different. When we are presenting on an item by staff or consultants, we will have the item on screen so people can see what the item is. Once staff has finished their presentation, we will take it off the screen so people can see the video. So we'll stop sharing this screen here and you'll be able to see the video. Hopefully that'll help people follow along. And lastly, to help facilitate this change of video, we are going to move back into in-person meeting for the committee members for both TAC and policy committees. So this month, the TAC and policy committee will be the last time where we will have a virtual option for now. So just a heads up on that. And just as a heads up for members of the committees and the public, please bear with us as we're kind of doing these new things. And if you have comments on is it working? Is it not working? Please let us know and we'll adjust as needed. So that is it. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Thanks, Aaron.
Matt's online. Matt Stitchick, are you there?
I am. Thank you.
If anybody has questions about the announcement, would now be all right to discuss it? Or?
Yeah.
Okay, if anybody has questions about anything that Aaron just went through. Okay, so when I'm speaking, does it zoom in on me and everyone can see me now?
Yeah, I hope. We'll see.
Okay.
A lot of it will have to be tested out, and when we look back at the recording of this, we'll have to see how it goes.
And if a member of the committee isn't able to come in person, they can still call in, but we're really highly encouraging that everyone come in person.
Correct.
That's kind of the expectation.
Yes.
Starting the next one.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, so moving on to the agenda. Do we have a motion to approve the agenda?
Move to approve. Second.
Okay, moved by Mr. Van Hoek, seconded by Mr. Buffalo. Right? Is that?
Actually,
Oh, Mr. Lindemood. Mr.
it was a
Lindemood.
duel.
I heard a few.
The team of Lindemood and Collins.
Okay, Mr. Lindemood. We'll go with that. Are there any objections? Or are there any changes? Are there any objections to approving the agenda? Okay, agenda is approved. I see there are no meeting minutes this time, so we're going to dive into the action items. Agenda item 5A, 2020 MTP Amendment 1. I'll turn it over to you, Aaron.
Thank you. Okay, everyone. So for some of you, this may be a new, exciting adventure where we do an amendment to our MTP. Normally what we do is we do large-scale updates every 4 years, but we do have the option to do an amendment in between those 4-year periods to add projects, remove projects, update the fiscal constraint, kind of a variety of different topics. Before you is amendment number 1 to the 2040 MTP. And I'll kind of go through the amendment and the process and then see where we're at from there. So this amendment is adding a new project to the MTP. It is a Alaska cargo and cold storage warehouse facility on the Ted Stevens Anchorage International Airport. So this facility is a secure up to 715,000 square foot climate controlled warehouse facility at the airport. And what we're showing in the MTP is phase 1 of the current project. Now, the reason that we're showing this in the MTP is because it's in part funded with BUILD grant. So the Better Utilizing Investments to Leverage Development federal grant program that was out for a number of years. It used to be a different program before becoming BUILD, and now it's known as the RAISE grant. So it kind of goes through these iterative update process. This grant was received in 2020 by the Alaska Energy Authority, and they sent me an email February of 2022 asking to get it into the TIP in the MTP. Now, the reason we're having to move so quickly on this is the funds expire at the end of this fiscal year. So if it is not in the TIP and the MTP by September 30th of 2022, the funds go away. So we are doing our best to assist our partners in helping to secure this funding. Normally in MTP, when you're adding an amendment when you're adding a project, you have to go through a variety of other things, such as a fiscal constraint analysis update or an air quality conformity determination. Working with FHWA on this project, because of the type of project it is, it's not a highway or transit project and won't have direct impact on the network outside of the airport. It was determined it does not need an air quality conformity determination analysis as part of this MTP update. It is still subject to general conformity, which is going through NEPA and everything like that. So that's their end that they will have to deal with. Additionally, we do not have to do a modeling for this project because it doesn't impact a highway or transit facility. And our fiscal constraints pretty simple because it is funding that's outside of our assumptions that we had as part of the 2040. It's a easy update to add those in as new funding and show are we still constrained. And if you go through the amendment, which we kept relatively short and to the point, you will see that we are still fiscally constrained by the end of the 20-year horizon period on the MTP. The reason we're having to update the 2040 and not just add it in as part of the 2050 is because the 2050 won't be updated until 2024, which is beyond the time period that they need this in the MTP. So this is before you now to give you a heads up about this amendment and also to ask for your recommendation to release this for a 30-day public comment period. And that's all I had on that.
Okay, any questions or comments from the committee? Mr. Butler?
Yeah, just to clarify for me, it's a building.
Yeah.
Why is it gotta be,
I second that.
go through this?
One, it's funded with federal grant funding, and two, FHWA says it has to be. So
Solid answer.
those are our requirements, and we are doing what we can. We have no choice in this matter in that regard. So
Okay.
it is strange. I understand, and even FHW is like, what? And then everyone kind of talked about it, and it was, even though it is a building, it is federal funds using it.
Now I'm going to ask my follow-up. So FHA has primacy over FAA in this instance, even though this is a building on an airport.
Because it's using FHWA funding, I wouldn't say primacy over, but they still have to follow FHWA requirements for this, and Todd may be able to help answer some more.
Yeah, FAA is not participating in this at all, other than providing the lease space for it. Actually, Anchorage International provided the lease space, but this is all private funded, with the exception of this grant. So there's no FAA money involved.
It's coming out of your.
No. Well, this grant is, yes.
So I managed to get an FHWA grant for a building. Does that happen a lot?
If it makes you feel better, we built a port and dock and Seward, but that takes up away money.
It's an eligible expense of the raise, build grant, and it can. I don't know how common it is.
Okay.
I may have missed it, then who would own the building?
Private building.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah, whoever ends up using their private funding for it.
At least.
So, kind of repeating the questions, it only comes through us because it's federal highway funding, but other than that, there's no AMET's involvement other than we need to vote on it because it's federal funding.
Because FHWA funding, kind of regardless of the source, requires it be consistent with planning documents, including AMAT's MTP and TIP. So yeah, even though there's not real involvement by AMAT's other than just putting it in our documents, it's part of the process.
Okay, thank you.
Any additional questions or comments from the community? Is there anyone online with questions or comments? Okay, any questions or comments from the public? Is now the time for that? Okay, any questions or comments from the public? I don't see any there either. What is the will of the committee?
Move to approve.
Second.
Okay, moved by Mr. Rebecca, seconded by Mr. Lyon. Are there any objections? Hearing none, the motion is approved. Okay, moving on to action item 5B, the BPAC appointments. And this one, I'm assuming Joni is going to be taking.
Yes, Miss Joni Will, AMAT staff will go ahead and be presenting on this.
Okay, thank you.
Great, thanks, Erin. So we have 2 BPAC appointments before the committee today, and we're asking you to review the appointments and recommend to the policy committee approval for these 2 folks. So Katie Severin is the first one. She has a bio here that you have in front of you, and I'll just read it out really quick. She is Associate State Director of Communications at AARP Alaska. She's born and raised Alaskan, holds a bachelor's degree in political science from Colorado College, and a master's in public administration from the UAA. Before joining AARP, she worked in federal and local government, focusing on economic and community development and strategic communications. And she will be replacing Eric Gurley in the social services seat. The second person we have is our person to fill the community or environmental organization seat vacancy that we have. His name is Michael Williams. He came to Alaska in 1987 to attend UAF. He graduated with a Bachelor of Science in Biological Sciences in 1992, received his master's in 1997 from UAF. He's married with 2 adult daughters, who graduated from East Anchorage High School, and he rides his bike to all business appointments within a couple miles of his home in the rain, snow, or sun. He's a marine mammal biologist and has worked on research projects around the state. So these are the 2 folks we've got recommending for approval, and I don't think they're on the phone today, but we would just recommend that you approve these 2 people to be appointed to our BPAC. Thank you.
I would like to interject real quick and just thank Eric Gurley for his service. He has been serving on BPAC for quite a while now, 6 or more years, and we really appreciate his dedication to helping to improve non-motorized transportation throughout the AMATS area, and wish him well in his endeavors, as I believe he's moving on into furthering his education career with a new PhD.
Are there any questions or comments from the community? Mr. Lyon?
Just a couple thoughts. I don't know Mr. Williams, but working for NOAA, I think that's a pretty good
fit for that environmental organization seat, so I think we'll be fortunate to have him there. I do know Katie Severin, but I also know that most BPACs around the country, anytime you have this sort of thing connected to a MPO, you have an overload of bike organizations because most cities have Bike Denver or Bike Des Moines or whatever. They have that, but they don't usually have a big a walking community that is organized in a group. And so I think having someone who is representing AARP is a great connection for us to get into that walking side of the house. Katie worked in the mayor's office previously and has a lot of good experience that will help us a lot. So I think this is a great appointment. I'm very, very happy to support both of those.
Thanks, Greg. Any other committee questions or comments? And which group was Eric representing previously?
He was social services, so Katie's just taking over for him.
Okay, was he with the?
Oh, what was his job?
Oh, he was with Hopes originally, and then he was with, what was the name? It was like walking, shoot, I should have that. I should know that. I apologize. But it was what was an ADA group
Okay.
here in town, nonprofit.
And so it wasn't that he was representing those agencies, it was more that he had some of that experience and he fit more of the role, and kind of similar thing with Katie. Like, so it's not so much that these positions are trying to represent an organization, it's more that their background is such that it targets some of these areas. Kind of how, the different seats work.
I mean, kind of a both mixture. They do help represent the organization, but they do with targeted or like a wide variety. Eric Gurley works for Access Alaska, so it's kind of an all-encompassing group. And so we try and find any open seat we put out for like a nomination period where people submit applications. Any seat that's from a community, like an organization type of thing, we reach out and try and find somebody from an organization who would be willing to serve. And this community and environmental organization could be something like Hope Alaska or NOAA, for example. And we got a recommendation for this individual and felt he was a good fit.
Yeah, when we first created the BPAC for the environmental seat, we had someone with Alaska Center for the Environment. Later on, we had someone from the Nature Conservancy, so we were connecting with that environmental side on that. And this time, we have someone who is with NOAA, which seems like that's a good connection there. We've had people in the past for the disability seat that were connected to organizations that were in that area. The social services seat sometimes is hard to fill, so I think it's just a good connection there with the AARP in this case. So.
Okay.
And Eric actually recommended Michael for BPAC appointment. So that meant a lot to us because he's been serving for 6 years as a member.
Okay, that's great. This is my first time having these appointments, so it's good to a little bit of a better feel for it. Thanks.
Yeah.
Any questions or comments from the public? Okay. What is the will of the committee?
So moved.
Okay, moved by Mr. Lyon, and you're moving into.
I move that we recommend to the policy committee approval of these 2 BPAC appointments.
Second. Mrs. Shana Kilcoyne.
Okay. Moved by Mr. Lyon, seconded by Ms. Kilcoyne. Do we have any objections? Hearing none, the motion is approved. The next item, item 5C, Title 21 parking resolution. Who's going to be presenting on this one?
I will be doing a brief overview of this and moving on to action. So this, just as a quick refresher, Municipality of Anchorage is looking to make some changes to Title 21 parking and site access. Just really quickly, this amendment provides for area-specific lower parking requirements and streamlines approval of reductions in parking for developments. It also reforms site access requirements for driveways and pedestrian facilities. We've had a number of presentations from the Municipal Long Range Planning Group on this item. And right now what is being asked for you is a resolution supporting their change that they're working on right now to Title 21. Just briefly, why this is before AMATS is this change is helping us to implement our 2040 MTP through our goals and objectives, as well as action item 35-E, or 3E-5, sorry, I got confused, where it's working with MOA planning and traffic on parking strategies that help shift to a more multimodal approach. This is exactly what this is helping to do. Additionally, it helps implement the non-motorized plan, goal 5, to provide support facilities and amenities designed to enhance the bike network and encourage use of bicycling as a transportation system. And also helps with the implementation of the congestion management process, where this is a recommended strategy in there as well. This is a very good way to show linkage between transportation and land use, as well as how are we as AMATS helping to implement our studies and plans that we do over the years. So this resolution is just saying that we support the Muni in their efforts. I do have one quick suggested change. To add a whereas to explain that it's helping to implement action 3E-5 of the 2040 MTP. I believe it was inadvertently left off of the resolution.
So to include that, with the person making the motion, you can say with the addition of.
If you want, yes. Yes.
Otherwise, if they don't include it, then it won't include what you're.
You want to include it.
Sounds good. And let's see. Any questions or comments from the committee?
Aaron, could you repeat 3E5 again or summarize it?
It's basically 3E5 is supporting the Muni planning and traffic department in parking strategies that help shift to a multimodal options for transportation.
And where in the list of whereases would you input this, or are you adding to one that already exists?
Well, we have a couple of options. My recommendation would make it a separate whereas under the, sorry, they're not labeled. I guess we'll have to change that. But under the whereas that's talking about the 2040 MTP goals 5, 6, we could add just another whereas there because it is a little different from the goals and objectives, and just kind of highlight that it's an action item. So we can add it under there as another whereas.
Are there any other questions or comments from the committee? So one question that I have is after the AMATS policy committee goes to them and they pass and approve it, at one point does it go before, is this going to the assembly and they're voting on it and our resolution just gets tacked onto that, or how does that kind of work?
Our resolution would just go to the Muni planning department to show them that we are supporting it, and they can include that in packets if they submit it to the assembly. Our resolution's done at the point if the policy committee approves it. It doesn't need assembly approval. It's just a way to show that AMATS is supporting their efforts, and they can say, okay, we have resolutions from X community councils and AMATS, the transportation group, is supporting these efforts.
Okay. Perfect. Are there any additional questions or comments from the committee? Any from the public? What is the will of the committee?
And move to amend resolution 2022-01 to include a whereas that would state that this is consistent with and supportive of goal 5E3.
3E- action item 3E-5
Action item 3E-5
of the 2040 MTP.
of the 2040 MTP.
Thank you.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved by Mr. Fulhay, second by Mr. Lyon. And you did a fantastic job of getting that most of the way there with a little support from Aaron. Are there any objections to approving the motion? Okay, hearing none, the motion is approved.
Thank you very much.
Yes, thanks. Thanks for all the work on this.
Now the
Oh, was that?
That's just the.
That was just approval. Got it. Okay.
Yeah.
So I can look at the amendment was approved. Now onto the main motion. I was used to the main motion getting the amendment like attached to it.
Yeah, I've been to too many assembly meetings.
Okay, so the amendment's approved. Now onto the main motion. Do we have discussion on it, or do we just move into the, okay, what is the will of the committee on the main motion?
And move to approve AMAT's resolution 2022-01 as amended.
Okay,
Second.
moved by Mr. Rojo, seconded by Mr. Van Ho. Are there any objections? Hearing none, the motion is approved. Okay, now we can move on.
Thank you again.
I think we had almost everyone on the front here contribute to that. Way to go, team. Okay, item 6A, project and plan updates, 2050 MTP.
That is me.
Again.
Okay, let's go through these so we can get to our presentation. Just a quick update on where we are at with the 2050 MTP. We just closed our comment period for the performance measures and criteria. We got 192 comments, 194 comments. The majority of them were submitted by one individual and one community council, so they're duplicative of each other. So we will be going through those and putting those responses out for everyone to see. We'll be sending them to the committee members so you can review staff's responses to those. I also just want to let you know we are having a public work session coming up here soon, or public meeting. Our anticipated time is May 11th, and this is where we will start doing issues identification and project nomination for the 2050 MTP. So very exciting for us as we're moving forward with this plan. I also wanted to just give a quick update on the schedule. We just got approval to get started on the model update for the 2050 MTP, and that has shifted our schedule considerably. We originally were going to have about 6 to 9 months between when the public comment period on the entire document closed and when we brought it back to the committees for final approval, so we can make adjustments based on the public comment period. The model is going to take about a year to update, and that pushes our schedule to where we only have 3 months available between when the public comment period closes on the public review draft and when we have to come back to the committees for approval. So just a heads up to everyone, the schedule is concise and we will get approved on time, but I just wanted to make sure everyone is aware of that. And we will have that schedule posted for the public so they can see. That's all I had on that one.
Okay. This was not, there's no action items, just move on to the next item. Okay, the next item, 6B, 2023 to 2026 tip.
That's me as well. So as all of you know, we do have a draft version of the new tip out for public comment period. It is open through May 5th. End of business day was when it closes. So please get the notice out to everyone. We've sent it out to the FCC and everyone possible to try and get this information out. This is the perfect time for people to be commenting on what projects are in there or what projects were not included in the staff draft version. We also sent out a schedule so everyone can know kind of what's happening with that. And one thing I do want to highlight that pertains to this group, we are going to be shifting the TAC meeting in May from May 12th to May 19th. The reason for that is we need a little more time from when the comment period closes, when the assembly public hearing is taking place, to get all of our comments organized to bring them to the committee members in May. So I just want to give you a heads up on that. The schedule is available that we sent out or on our website if you want to take a look at what else is coming. But right now we do have approval of the tip in August of 2022 to send to FHWA in September for final approval. So again, that schedule is concise. And that's all I had on that one. Oh, I would like to thank everyone who's involved in the scoring and ranking. We had 142 nominations, and it was a lot of work on staff's part. So I really appreciate their effort in coming together and getting that done in a timely fashion.
Yes, thank you, Aaron. I concur with my staff. Also acknowledge the significant effort that was. So thank you everyone who was involved in that. Moving on to the general information updates. I have item 7A, EV spending. Sounds like Shana Clifford, maybe speaking to that.
Yes, Shanna, if you're on, you can go ahead and share your screen and take it away.
Okay, thank you. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, excellent. Well, great. I would like to do a better job of keeping the tech updated on EV happenings, but right now there's just a lot going on. So I thought it was an appropriate time to share some information on kind of where we're at. So today I'll talk about transportation emissions in Anchorage and in Alaska. I'll talk about the Anchorage Climate Action Plan, and I'll talk a little bit about electric vehicles in general and in Alaska while highlighting a couple of projects that we've got right now. There are two electric vehicle funding sources that I'll discuss, the Volkswagen settlement and then the bipartisan infrastructure, the bill law. So Sector 2 of the Anchorage Climate Action Plan is on land use and transportation, and the CAP was created through a coordinated effort with the municipality and the University of Alaska Anchorage with really great input from the community, including about 100 people on our working groups, including some of the people in this room and on the tech today. So thank you for your help. And it was adopted by the Assembly in May of 2019. So Alaska is the #1 state in the country for transportation emissions per capita due to our, large size, small population, and geographic isolation. So it's not too surprising. Some of the solutions identified in the Climate Action Plan for lowering those emissions are using less gasoline and diesel fuel. So how do we do that? Per the plan, Anchorage can accomplish this by really just shortening the distances people need to travel, and that's all about planning, reducing the number of vehicle trips, increasing non-motorized transportation and public transit, and switching to electric vehicles. And really, it's pretty cool to see the innovation going through electric vehicle, the transportation sector right now in electric vehicles, and automotive companies have committed hundreds of billions of dollars in the last couple of years alone to just vehicle electrification. So I'm sure that you've seen it throughout your life even. We do project to nearly 25,000 EVs on Alaska's roads by 2030. I'm working with experts to create a greenhouse gas inventory for Anchorage, and that will be for 2015 and 2020. And vehicle miles traveled, or VMT, has been some of the most difficult pieces to collect for this inventory. We ended up using Google VMT data and then State Department of Environmental Conservation data. So thank you for the help on that, DEC folks. We hope that for future inventories, we'll be able to use an AMATS VMT travel model, and we might even be able to use fuel tax data. We don't have that for 2018, so we just need to make sure that our data is consistent in where it's coming from. And but incorporating that in the future models, I think, will be a really great opportunity for us. So this is just a preliminary look at our greenhouse gas inventory with regard to transportation. And you can see transportation here is it's 42.6%, which is on par with what we saw in previous models. So really not much of a change. However, if you're looking at the graph on the right, 2015 versus 2020, we see three differences here. The one on the far left with the higher bars, that's Ted Stevens Airport. So the blue is 2015, the red is 2020. We saw an increase there. The next one to the right, the next notable bars are gas VMT followed by diesel VMT. So both of those dropped from 2015 to 2020. Not surprising because of COVID. And we talked to the airport, and of course there was a lot of shipping, a lot of shopping online, and so their cargo traffic went way up in 2020. Nationally, transportation makes up the largest share of emissions with 27% in the US, and that's mostly from gas and diesel. And of course, there's emissions from electric vehicles, and I want to talk about those for a second. Those take place at the power plants, of course, where electricity is generated. And Chugach's energy is powered by natural gas, hydro, and wind. It would be a much different mix if you're powering a vehicle in Fairbanks or Juneau. It really depends on what that electrical mix is. And based on Chugach's calculations, they've estimated per their emissions factor, a 62% reduction in carbon dioxide than the average efficiency gasoline powered vehicle. So in addition, an electric vehicle doesn't emit cold start carbon monoxide or other pollutants that we see with internal combustion engines. So why EVs? The cost of savings, of course, are what most consumers are interested in. And I'm going to get into that a little bit more in just a minute. I talked a little bit about emissions reductions. And of course, that's a huge reason that people move into EVs. And then if you've been in an EV, especially a Tesla, I actually got to drive one last week for the first time. A really fun drive. Electric cars can go from 0 to really fast in no time. And I described it as like a roller coaster. It just doesn't feel like a standard vehicle. They're also super quiet and they're practically maintenance free. A lot of the new models have ranges of 300 plus miles, with the entry level really coming in at about 100 or more miles per charge. And I'll note that battery electric vehicles have a lot lower scheduled maintenance. There's just fewer parts and fewer maintenance throughout its life. The estimates that I've seen on a national level are about 6.1 cents per mile for an electric vehicle for maintenance and operations, compared to 10.1 cents per mile for an internal combustion engine. So in the fall, we partnered with Chugach Electric to install a level 2 charging station at the Rustic Oak parking lot. It's a ChargePoint CT 4000, so pretty cool, or at least cool sounding. And it's got 2 ports that are level 2 chargers. Why did we install it there? Well, the municipality doesn't actually have a lot of land that is next to amenities or places you would spend an hour or so. So the Rustic Goat was an option where the municipality owns the land next to the Rustic Goat, the parking lot, and people can go and have a meal. And at a level 2, so that's 220 or 240 volts, we're looking at about a 20 or 30 mile charge in an hour. So people who come sit down and eat a meal or even go for a walk on the trail would get about 20 or 30 miles. And I'll just compare that quick. A fast charger in 20 or 30 minutes can give you a full charge. Though those fast chargers are changing really quickly and ramping up really quickly. So it's just happening faster and faster, and we're just trying to keep up. It's anywhere from 50 to 250 kilowatts for those charging stations. So as of December 31st, 2021, there were 16 makes and 24 models of battery electric vehicles. And by battery electric vehicles, that means entirely electric, not the hybrid that you might also plug in. And then 37 models of the plug-in hybrid electric. So there's 61 models just on the Anchorage streets as of December. And the most common is the Tesla, which is kind of surprising to me, followed by the Chevy Bolt. So you can see we're definitely increasing, especially in the all battery electric vehicles. On the right is a chart which shows the cost of fuel for ICE's internal combustion engine versus electric. So in both charts, the yellow is an all electric vehicle at 20 cents per kilowatt hour, which is the residential rate for Chugach Electric. The green is an ICE vehicle at $3 a gallon. But of course, I threw in a $4.50 a gallon to kind of look at what we're paying right now at the pump. So that's the orange bar, $4.50 a gallon. So the 3 bars on the left are at 10,000 miles, and then the 3 bars on the right are 20,000 miles. So you can kind of see if you drive around 10,000 miles a year, the electric vehicle is going to cost about a third of what the internal combustion engine is at $4.50. So for 10,000 miles, or sorry, yeah. So if you're driving 10,000 miles in a year, you would spend just over $2,000 using an average efficiency gas vehicle compared to $690 to power an average efficiency electric vehicle. So that saves you almost $1,400 in a year. And I use 21.6 miles per gallon for the gas vehicle, and I used what did I use there? 2.9 kilowatt. Should have it in 2.9 miles per kilowatt hour is what I used for the electric vehicle. So folks driving the electric vehicles right now are not minding those pump prices at all. I want to talk briefly about a very cool project that maybe you've heard about at Solid Waste Services. So Solid Waste Services has a fleet of 70 vehicles, including 22 or 23 garbage trucks. And diesel garbage trucks are averaging about 2 miles per gallon. So that makes them a really good candidate for electric vehicles, especially when you have something like regenerative braking, where they actually are charging up at stops, and that is all a garbage truck does. And it doesn't actually go very far throughout the day, and takes a break midday. So we targeted these as really good for a pilot electric vehicle, heavy duty truck. So we're replacing a diesel garbage truck with an electric version that's a 520, and that'll reduce our fuel and maintenance costs, improve air quality, and neighbors can enjoy a quieter option, though they might have to set an alarm as opposed to hearing the garbage truck come down the street to put out their garbage, which is what I do right now. Solid Waste Services is partnering with a company called eCamion to test a battery as a part of this project. We're really focusing on using the battery to kind of slow charge during the day. And that way, when the garbage trucks come in at night, we can charge those up quickly. Whereas if you are charging them straight from the electric grid, if you're not very careful, you can incur some pretty high demand costs by kind of peaking your power usage. So we're trying to do that to save money. We were very fortunate to get a couple of grants. We got about a $700,000 grant from the Department of Energy for this project, and a $25,000 grant for the battery charging portion for this project. And I'll add that the pictures that you see up here are the electric vehicle 220 box truck. So we got that one last July, and we've been operating it ever since. We have had a couple of problems here and there, and it's been so far entirely kind of human issues in the way it's programmed, and just different things that we're learning about. For example, one of the issues was that when we first got it, it would start really slowly from a stop, and we learned that it was programmed to try to mimic a diesel vehicle. And so they kind of reprogrammed that, and then it would just had no problem stopping. Just one of the examples of trying something new. I'll add that the Alaska Center for Energy and Power is doing performance analysis of the trucks so that other fleets in Alaska and the world can learn from this pilot, since we are so far north and deal with such cold weather. This is just a flyover. If you've gone by 56th and Old Seward or the highway, you've seen probably some major construction. That's the new central transfer station at Solid Waste Services. This is a flyover image of our warm storage facility. And because of this project, we were very thoughtful in future-proofing this facility. And so we installed conduit and stub-outs in most of the bays so that, this facility, which is going to be used for decades to come, is ready for electric vehicles. And we were able to do those upgrades at a time when it is much cheaper than you would have to do down the line. Okay, so this is the moving forward on infrastructure. These next two slides are kind of the meat here. In 2009, you probably heard that Volkswagen had installed software in their diesel engine vehicles to try to cheat the emissions tests. And so after a lawsuit, they were ordered to pay about $10 billion as a settlement, and a portion of that had to be used to invest in emissions reductions infrastructure. Alaska received 8.125 million, and that money went through to the Alaska Energy Authority to administer it. And so in 2020, Alaska Energy Authority began overseeing the deployment of electric vehicle charging infrastructure across Alaska on our most heavily traveled highways. And so you can see here, they were able to throw in about $960,000 of that money to add 12 DCFCs, so that's the fast chargers, and 11 level 2 stations at 9 different locations. These are all, may not look it, but they're under 100 miles apart. So no matter what vehicle you're driving, you should be able to get from one to another. And I'll talk more about what that highway system is going to look like. Private landowners and property owners chipped in another $500,000 to make this happen. So now we're looking at a $1.5 million investment in charging infrastructure. The Alaska Energy Authority did award these grants, and they're hoping to have the project done sometime this summer. Oh, I also wanted to note that the Alaska Energy Authority, going back to this, also hosts an electric vehicle working group. And so they've been working on developing that highway corridor beyond even this VW settlement. And that leads us to the bipartisan infrastructure law. And this is the same as the IIJA, the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. They're the same thing. So Aaron talked about this just a couple of months ago, sorry. So that was passed in November of 2021, and it provides $550 billion over the fiscal years 2022 through 2026. And this is really a huge investment in all sorts of infrastructure, not just electric vehicles. So it includes things like bridges, clean water, mass transit, broadband, and electric vehicle infrastructure. But it really is kind of this once in a lifetime funding opportunity to complete our fast charging network, as well as those community-based charging installations in really rural and urban Alaska. So Alaska is going to receive over $50 million over the next 5 years for that charging infrastructure. It's going to be managed by Alaska Energy Authority, and they have to submit a statewide plan every year in order to get these funds, with the first one being due this August, so really right around the corner. The the bill, I'll call it the bill, sorry. It also appropriates $2.5 billion for competitive grants under the Charging and Fueling Infrastructure Program. And then there's several other programs that provide funding that we could be eligible for. And some of those programs, states, local governments, and MPOs are eligible to participate in. They're either new or expanded upon programs, such as the Safe Streets and Roads for All program. I will say that I'm still not quite certain. I know Department of Transportation is going to be playing a role here, and I'm still not certain what that relationship is or that coordination is. The NEVI, the National Electric Vehicle Program formula guidance, is distributed by the Federal Highway Administration. And I know that AEA is working with the Department of Transportation on that plan. I'm just not sure what it looks like or exactly what the DOT's role is. So maybe that's something, you know, we can work with through AMATS or after AEA gives guidance. One thing I'm particularly interested in after working at Solid Waste Services with our electric vehicle pilot is how to build the EV workforce. This is a nascent market in Alaska, and it's still growing and growing rapidly, but workforce is really lagging, and I've been looking for funds and programs for our garbage truck project, and I'm just not finding them. So I'll be curious about what kind of opportunities we have there. And I think that is pretty much what I wanted to cover here. I don't want to take up too much time, but want to kind of give an update of where we're heading and what you're going to be hearing about in terms of electric vehicle infrastructure funding. I'm going to stop sharing my screen.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Gilcoin. Appreciate that. Do we open up for questions or just move on?
Yeah.
Are there any questions or thoughts for Ms. Gilcoin? Presentation?
And this is Matt Citrick. I'm curious what's become of the city's electric transit bus? Is that still in use? And if so, how is it being charged these days?
So that was a pilot program in 2018, I believe. The transit department had an electric Proterra bus for about 4 months over the winter, which is nice because you can test it in the hardest conditions. And I think, sorry, this was a while ago, so I'm gonna dig back. My recollection is that the bus basically, we're seeing that it's not quite there yet. They're not going to be able to run all day. The buses right now at the transit department are going about 18 hours a day. And so in order to do that with electric buses, you would have to do fast charging during operation. And that is a significant cost. So with the cost and technology, I think they're, working to make that work. But I think for Anchorage, we're not there.
Thank you.
Other questions?
I have a question and a comment. Shane, this is Kent Colhay's first very good presentation, very interesting stuff. I had a question about the charging stations, like the one at the Rustic Goat and then the ones that are proposed to be installed under the grant. Are those pay for use, or are they publicly provided charging stations? How do they operate?
There are some downtown that are free, so publicly provided, and I think those had grant funding. While the charging station at the Rustic Goat did have grant funding, it is a charge to pay so that the municipality can cover its costs of the install and upkeep. So I think most of them that you're going to see are going to be pay to charge.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments?
Shana, do you know if they're, regarding those fast charging stations, the 9 that are being installed, do you know if there's any restrictions on the time of day that they can be used? Or what policies are in effect for who's allowed to use them? Do you have to be a patron of those facilities in order to have access?
Good question. As far as I know, you do not have to be a patron of those facilities. There's, I believe, no restrictions on timing. And the Regulatory Commission of Alaska just recently came out with some new rates specifically for fast charging to make sure that that's not a barrier. Because I think what Matt's getting at is if you charge maybe twice, most charging is still going to be done at home, like 90+% probably still will be done at home. But when those times when you're on the road, you need to charge. If you have, for instance, a couple of people charging on a fast charger within a month, your cost is extremely high. And so until we get to a spot where we have more electric vehicles who are charging regularly, it's a prohibitive cost to pay that demand fee. And so the RCA just approved a rate that I think will be supportive. I'm still kind of curious to see how it will work out. Did that answer all of your questions?
So those 9 stations to be installed on the map is shown. Those are also pay per charge, and you say it's not restricted access.
As far as I know, so most of them haven't been installed yet. They will be this season. As far as I know, none of them will be free. I can't imagine them being free.
Right.
And there's no restriction on time or patronage.
Thank you.
Okay, let's call for questions.
We do have a question from the public.
Okay.
So I'll just read it out for you, Shana. If questions are permitted, what is either AMATS or the MOA doing to calculate the combined rate of EV changeover and VMT reduction needed to reduce emissions 80% by 2050?
A really good question. We're hoping to track it through these greenhouse gas inventories. And then AMATS is working on the VMT model, and that will allow us to more closely track that. So we'll be able to tell how that transition is going and how quickly we're getting there. And I want to emphasize that, you know, we're still talking about emissions at the electrical system. So as the electrical system gets more efficient, we're going to see reductions in carbon emissions through that transition.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks so much again. Really appreciate it. And we'll move on to the next item. The next general information update is item 7B, the Seward to Glen Highway PEL update. Who will this one be going to?
This will be going to Kelly and her team.
Okay.
Hi, thanks for giving us time this afternoon on your agenda to discuss the Seward Glen Mobility Planning Environmental Linkage Project. My name is Kelly Summers. I'm the project manager with the State of Alaska Department of Transportation and Public Facilities. And this project is a joint venture between the state DOT and our partners at AMATS. We're here this afternoon at the request of Aaron Young and Ellen to give you an update on what's been going on with the project since we last presented to you guys in October. With me today is Lori Cummings from HDR. Lori is a senior senior planner at HDR, and she is also the planning lead for this project. So with that, I will give you your attention to Lori. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Sorry, there's a lot of technology going on right now, so forgive me if I missed that. So today we just wanted to give you a short update on what we've been doing for the Seward Glen PEL project. It's been several months since we were here. I believe we were last here in November, and we've been doing a lot of work since then, so we just wanted to keep everyone informed of what we were doing. Since then, we have completed our traffic forecast memo, and that memo looked at what the traffic would be in 2050 based on Department of Labor and Workforce Development population projections. We also completed the basic description of the environmental setting memo, which basically describes the existing environmental conditions in the project area and includes information such as land use, wetlands, air quality, kind of what you'd find in that existing conditions chapter of a NEPA document. We have also been working on our origin destination study. Last report, we did a study last year that looked at kind of Bluetooth technology to figure out where people were going from and going to in Anchorage. So we have completed the study and is currently under review by DOT and the project team. We've also completed our no-build 2019 and 2050 travel model runs. We've heard a lot about the travel model today, and that's what we are using for this project. We're kind of looking at the existing traffic system and what is that going to look like in 2050? Are we still going to have congestion issues? If so, where are they? So we're in the process of looking at those and making sure we're happy with those results. We're also working on several other reports. We're working on a system performance report that looks at how is our existing transportation system performing? Are we meeting our standards? Are we meeting an acceptable level of service? Do we have an acceptable lane width? We are looking at the motor vehicle system, so vehicles, as well as transit and non-motorized systems. We're also working on the purpose and need statement to figure out what transportation challenges we're trying to address by this project. And we're also working on our screening criteria so that when we identify alternatives, we know what criteria we are going to use to evaluate and screen the various alternatives. We have also conducted a lot of public outreach in the last couple of months. We held a virtual public meeting. We held an online open house. We went to 5 different community groups. We held 2 listening posts. We performed a lot of email communication. There was a lot of communication out to various interest groups. So, and as part of that, we asked for feedback on the project. And we got over 400 comments from members of the public about the project. They included a variety of different topics, travel forecasting, land use, property. People wanted to know what the alternatives were. But almost a third of the comments we received were about non-motorized issues. So, and they were quite a range. They identified, areas where they would like to see new non-motorized facilities, locations that had, specific problems that they wanted to identify. And so one of the ways people could provide feedback to us was through a comment map. And when they made comments through this map, they were able to select the mode that they were using for their comments. And so we were able to map that data. And so a lot of people were telling us that there were non-motorized issues or needs that weren't being met in the Fairview area. That's kind of where the bulk of these non-motorized comments were concentrated, but we did see them throughout the entire study area. So as a result, we have been looking at a lot of the non-motorized information to incorporate it into the project, and the city and AMATS has actually done a lot of work in this area already. One project that they just recently completed is their non-motorized plan to look at how to improve mobility and safety in the entire AMATS area without needing a car. One of the things they looked at was where is the demand for non-motorized use. So they conducted a demand analysis that looked at various factors like where people live, work, play, go to school, kind of where people might want to walk to or bike to, and then they created this demand analysis map. And as you can see, the downtown area it has a pretty high demand for non-motorized usage. They also did a lot of additional analysis of the existing conditions in that area. One thing they did was a bicycle level of traffic stress. And that looked at items such as the posted travel speed, street width, and the presence of bicycle facilities, such as on-street travel lanes, to determine how comfortable is it for people to ride a bike in this area. And in our study, it kind of ranged. Some of the side streets, it's not too bad, but on some of the major roads in the corridor, it had a level 4, which is the highest level of stress. So, I recommend people look at the non-motorized plan. It included some additional analysis such as equity, and so it provides a lot of really good information about the non-motorized conditions in this area. But I also looked at other sources. The MOA annual traffic report is also another great source of information. They publish information about bicycle and pedestrian volumes on our trail system. So this graph here shows usage along the Chester Creek Trail, and Mulcahy Park has about 250 pedestrians a day, whereas bicyclists has about 300 a day. So it's fairly heavily used through this area. And one nice thing about these annual traffic reports is not only do they have the volumes, they also have information about crashes. We heard a lot of information from the public that people were concerned about the bike and ped crashes that were being experienced in this area. So, sorry, these are a little hard to read. We are currently working with the MOA Traffic Department to get GIS data so we can zoom in on this area and kind of look at it over a time frame to reflect where these clusters are. But we can see there are some clusters, especially around the kind of Fifth Avenue C area, and there's another one kind of Ingram Gamble, just where it divides up. So we're going to be looking at this information in more detail to really see, is there a pattern to where these are occurring? And then we're also going to be using other sources of information, such as Vision Zero, Strava has some information. So we're going to be looking at all of those different components, kind of really get a sense of the non-motorized issues and needs in this corridor. Okay, so just a quick schedule update. We're kind of currently in the third step there, the purpose and need and evaluation criteria. So we're working on the draft purpose and need statement, the evaluation criteria, and we're intending to have a public meeting coming up pretty soon. We're still finalizing the date and location, so we can't quite share those details yet, but we will share them with you shortly once they've all been finalized. And then we're happy to answer any questions you might have.
Any questions from the community? Questions or comments? Okay, any questions or comments from the public? Do you see anything?
This is Matt Stichik. I was hoping we could back up to the slide on the pedestrian and bicycle crash maps. And I was curious if we will have access to these slides after the meeting.
We can make them available, I'm sure, but these particular maps are in the 2020 annual traffic report, which is available on the MOA Traffic Department website.
Yep.
So,
Okay. Let's
That's
see.
my
I can't,
group's and
I'm
can-
online, so I can't see the crash maps on the screen at this point. But I noticed there was quite a cluster of pedestrian crashes along Minnesota Drive. And I was curious what intersection that was. Looks like Minnesota, and it's south of Benson, Northern Lights Benson, and north of
It looks-
Haldane.
Looks like Spinard, and I'd be happy to talk with you offline, Matt.
Okay.
You can want that my team's put together, and there's also a really neat online tool that you can build explore as well if you want to look anywhere in the MOA in Anchorage that will give you details, and you can go at it, or you can let me know and we can help you out if you have any questions.
Very good. I'll let somebody else.
No problem. Good question. Okay, other questions or comments? I'll just have to add in that I think it's great you've done so much public outreach, and I know that this is one that the assembly has been tracking really closely, and there's lots of interest, and so thank you for all the work that you're doing.
our pleasure. Thank you.
Okay. Looks like the next item is committee comments. The floor is now open for any comments from the committee. Any committee member have an update for us?
I have a couple things.
Okay, go for it.
We, as you know, we had, since I moved up to director, we had the AMETS coordinator position open, and Aaron has been acting in that position since December. We had 2 candidates, very, very strong candidates, really good interviews. We did end up making Aaron the permanent new coordinator, so we're very happy about that. There you go.
Thank you. It's official.
And,
Quite the ceremony.
Yes, I know. This is about all I get.
and with that, we will have an opening for Aaron's position, the senior planner position that should post today. We'll have it posted for a week and posting that worldwide, nationwide to the room as well if we can, and see what we get. Hopefully we'll find some good candidates in that first week. If not, we'll open it up a little longer, but yeah, we're excited going forward.
Thank you. Awesome, congrats, Aaron. Thank you. Other committee comments? Aaron, go ahead.
We've have had over the last year or so, a fair amount of traffic through town during the winter season, which is good for us, I suppose. But passenger season is upon us, and gravel season is upon us. So what looks like a sleepy railroad is not going to be sleepy much longer. So,
Don't drive down C Street.
if you, 5 o'clock, C Street going south, find a plug-in station.
Turn it down.
Yeah.
Okay, Mr. Rick.
Well, most of the ice is gone. It only took a few weeks. So down at the port, we're getting ready to see Pacific Power Marine come back this summer to do the last of the cleanup work on the new petroleum cement terminal. We are far enough along now where we're in the process of going through all the changeover checklists from the construction company and the program management consultant to the port. So we're going to do the lion's share of that in the next couple of weeks, and then we'll have a facility that will at least be able to service petroleum barges until Pacific Power Marine comes back. They have a little bit of cleanup dredging to do before it'll be deep enough for tankers, which we hope will happen sometime in late May, early June. And then we'll have a fully functional brand new terminal, first one in over 20 years constructed down there in the port. It's a big deal for us.
Yeah, that's great news. Thank you. Other committee members? Anyone online? Okay, one thing from traffic is that with breakup being upon us, we have weight restrictions currently in place on many of our roads. You might have seen signs go up, and the commercial shippers and others are aware. And the intent is to try to limit oversized loads, heavy loads on our roads to reduce wear and tear, especially as this season of breakup is happening. We have monitors that look at the sub-base conditions. And so that's something that we do every year for a few weeks in this critical time period to try to limit damage and preserve the life of our road. So that's going on right now. You might have seen some of those signs up. And I think that goes through the end of May typically. I'm sure it affects the port. I know that my staff are coordinating closely with a lot of shippers.
Yeah, mostly big construction equipment is, you gotta wait till the road restrictions are off before you in earnest start moving that stuff around.
Yeah. Okay. Any other comments? How about comments from the public? Do we have any members of the public? Okay,
Time to remove your studs too.
that's right. Okay. Yeah, with the breakup, stud removal time is coming up. Thank you, Mr. Cecil. Other public comments? Okay, with that, we are adjourned at 3:42.